Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Being willing is not enough. We must do. Leonardo da Vinci.
You're listening to Writing Roots, brought to you by Aspen House Publishing.
Welcome to Writing Roots. I'm Lee Hull.
And I'm Lee Esses.
Before we get into today's question, don't forget to find us on Facebook, like us, follow us. Also, big news, we're now on YouTube.
Yay!
We have our entire first series up on YouTube, and we will be getting the rest of the series up through current onto the platform over the next few months.
We mentioned this back in September, how we were excited to get this up and running. So now it's an even more shareable platform. You can make sure that your writing group all has access to it because it's awesome. Have fun with it, share it, get the word out there. That's the goal.
So what is today's question?
This is one I see a lot on the forums, and it's sort of a bad question. I know there are no bad questions, but the fault is in the question, and that's, what do I need to know before I start writing my book? The fault in the question is assuming there's something you need to know before you start writing your book.
Because really, if you are just starting your writing journey, if you are just deciding that you're going to write a book for the very first time, you really don't need to know anything. It is perfectly okay for you to know basically nothing about the writing process, because writing is a discovery, especially writing that first draft of your first book.
And I think a lot of people ask this question because they see the statistics on finishing your first book. There are a lot of people who have written maybe a chapter and a half. They haven't completed a book because they feel like they don't know enough about the process to complete it.
When you set out to write your first book, you don't need to know anything. So what we're going to talk about is the things that you'll learn about yourself along the way, things that you'll learn in the process of writing your first book that will help you later.
Our very first episode we ever did was plotting versus pantsing. I am a plotter.
A year and a half ago, I was very determined that I was a pantser. I am slowly becoming a plantser.
What is a plotter? What is a pantser?
A pantser is someone that has a vague idea of the story they want to write, and they sit down and they write it, and they discover the story along the way.
A plotter knows where they're going, they know what they're supposed to hit when, they have a structure to their entire storytelling process. You'll also see the phrases of gardener and architect,
A discovery writer and an outline writer.
You will discover this about yourself when you write that book. You won't know your own style yet. That is okay, that's expected.
And you may try a few different things. You may be like me, that you start out as one thing, but realize down the line that you need to be something else if you want to achieve your goals.
Some people think you need to know what your pen name is before you start writing. Not really.
You don't need to figure out your pen name until you need to start the publishing and marketing process. Another thing that you'll learn about yourself along the way is what you need to do for yourself in order to write. Do you need to set up a daily schedule? Are you better writing at night like I am, or in the morning like Lee?
A lot of people really like writing in coffee shops. That energy, that buzz, helps stimulate the process. Other people, like me, give me a bunch of pine trees in a creek. I don't want to be distracted by everything around me. These are just differences and things that you learn about yourself as an author as you continue the process.
There is, I guess, one thing you do need to know before you start writing that first book. Mostly so you won't face a huge pile of disappointment and decide to not write anymore. And that one thing is that this book, realistically, won't be a bestseller.
But my book's different. It's special. It's fantastic.
That's great, but it probably still won't be a bestseller.
If money is your motivation for writing the book, then you might need to reevaluate why you're writing. The best writing does not come from being motivated by money. It comes from being motivated by a story that needs to be told.
So in the process of writing your first book, you'll learn what works for you. And there's a reason why you need to learn all of this. And that's for your second book and every book after that.
Once you kind of have an idea of what the process feels like, then you can start refining yourself toward it and it towards you. Because you now have an idea of what it feels like to build a story structure and build a plot, you can now look at it and go, I want this next book to be in this genre, which means about this much word count, which means the characters are going to come across this kind of conflict. These types of things help define your story and make it unique to you.
And hopefully, during your process of writing the first book, you've learned enough about the writing world to understand things like genre and word count and plot development and characterization. No, you're not going to be an expert in these things by your second book, but hopefully you have a starting knowledge of them to help your next work be better than your first.
Basically, every author I know that's broken that 1,000,000 word mark goes back and reads their first book and goes, I get it now. They've discovered something about themselves since then that has helped propel them forward and matured them as an author.
That's the one thing about writing, is you are never done learning about writing. There's always something else you can learn through the process.
We'll talk a little bit more next episode about how that happens. But for now, what you need to know before you start writing your book is that it's not going to be perfect.
I don't care if it's your first book or your 10th book or if you're a best-selling published author of 20 books. It's never going to be perfect on a first draft.
There is no shame in needing to be edited.
There's a reason why Brandon Sanderson's acknowledgement page is about 2 or 3 pages long, because he thanks all of his editors, his alpha readers, his beta readers, his gamma readers.
And.
All of those people that are involved in the process of writing a book to make it better, because it's not a one-person journey.
Another question that kind of goes along with managing your expectations for the book is it better to write a book quickly or slowly?
Part of this depends on you and your own writing process, and also the genre that you're writing in. If you're writing fiction, generally you want to write it quickly.
9 times out of 10, writing your book quickly will help minimize the number of rewrites that you have to do because you haven't forgotten from one chapter to the next what happens. It'll help you stay focused on the story instead of going off on all of these random tangents. And it'll help you not feel guilty about the project when you're not working on it.
I will especially say this is important for pantsers, because if you spend too long writing a story, you are going to create plot holes for yourself, because you're going to forget what you've written. This is also important for you editors out there, like me. You spend too long, you have to reread what you've written, and you decide to edit it instead of writing.
You can easily become your own worst enemy when you're writing, and that's especially the case if you're writing slowly.
Now, if you're writing nonfiction, this is a little different. Because nonfiction is factual-based, you want to make sure that you get what you're writing correct. It's a detail-oriented process to write nonfiction.
In this particular case, making it entertaining happens more during the editing process than it does during the writing process.
And to kind of go along with how long it should take you to write a book is how long it should take to edit. You need to allow more time for editing than you think you need.
Whatever number you just came up with in your head, at least double it.
trust me, you need to take time on editing, whether that's self-editing, whether that's getting an editor to edit your stuff. You need to edit. I don't care how good you think you are, you have to edit your book.
And this sounds like a hand slap, but it's really quite freeing because giving yourself that permission makes things so much more enjoyable to write.
So to kind of quickly wrap up, there are a couple of different categories to what you need to know in order to start writing. The most obvious is, of course, the actual functions of writing. The grammar, the punctuation, the language. If you don't know a language, it's hard to write.
Ultimately, the medium you're choosing in is about communication. If you don't understand the mechanics of the language, it's very difficult to communicate accurately to your audience.
You also need to know something about the characters, the plot, the world. Whatever that something is, it could just be the tiny sparks of an idea.
So to answer the big question, what do I need to know before I write my book? Some language to communicate in, your own name, maybe having something to write on. You really don't need to know anything. You need to have that passion to tell that story.
And then go out there and, of course,
write selfishly.
If you have a question or comment for our hosts or a topic you'd like us to cover, send us an email at writingroots@aspenhousepublishing.com or find us on Facebook by searching for Aspen House Publishing.